should see a request on your screen that says we are live streaming and for you to approve that. All right, Mr. Kirsch, we are live streaming and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lawson. So the purpose of our meeting today is this is the district committee meeting for the science textbook adoption. We have point of contacts from each of the middle schools and K-8 throughout the district. And I'm Steve Kirsch. I'm the secondary science specialist that works with middle school. If we can just go to the next slide, please, Dr. Lawson. All right, so the purpose of today's meeting is to come to a consensus on which resources we want to recommend to the superintendent and the school board for use with middle school science. I ask all of our participants today to please come in with an open mind, ready to listen to what other people have to say, because the choice we land on as a committee may or may not be the first choice of your school, and that's okay. We will be choosing one publisher that will be for all of the middle school courses, whether it's standard, advanced, accelerated, etc. So whichever one we choose will be for all of them. Our agenda today is first, I'm going to kind of go through the data, show you the data that was collected during the initial and focused review phases of the selection process. Then I'm going to give a chance for each school to talk about what they have chosen. At that time, we'll also give a chance to hear from our community members and our NESC or ESOL people that we have in the meeting. Even though the community member will have a vote at the end, the ESC ESOL member will not. And at that point, we'll do a poll to choose which of the publishers' materials we want to recommend. So if we can go on, please, Dr. Lawson. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the data from the initial review, and you can go ahead and jump to the next slide. So the initial review was held back in early January through early February. And this was where all of the materials were put up on the website and anybody could go in and review it, fill out a rubric of what they thought of the materials that were there. When I say everybody, I mean it could be school employees, it could be teachers, it could be community members, anybody that went on and wanted to do that. What you see here is the data that was collected. Please note in the bottom right, you could see the colors and what they mean. And those same colors will be used throughout the presentation today. So the blue means that the person believed that it exceeded expectations. 3 was satisfactory or meets expectations, and that's green. The orange, they thought it was unsatisfactory or did not meet expectations. And red meant that there was little or no evidence. So you can see what they chose in the different areas. I want to point out on the very bottom left that when we look at this data, one thing to keep in mind is that it's a very, very small sample size. There was one person who identified as a parent and 2 people who identified teachers that took part in this phase. So the data is very limited, what we look at there. Also, the data from this was provided to all the school committees to take into account when they were going through their own process. So if you can go ahead and jump to the next one, please. So at the end, after going through all the different categories, they would fill in their overall recommendation, and you can see that here. Where McGraw-Hill had 67% that were exceeds expectations. Discovery had 33, and Savvis had none in that particular category. And then on our next slide, this is a summary of the scores from all of the different categories. They took all the answers, put them together, and you can see the data that they had there. So if you can just go ahead and jump on to the next one. Once we completed the initial review phase, we moved into what we call the focused review phase. And this is the school committees. Each school set up the committee as they saw fit. It included teachers, administrators, community members, parents, and they got together and they reviewed it and looked through all of these categories. And you can see the categories are the same as we looked at during the initial review. The content, the information that was there, the support materials for the teachers, the differentiated instructional supports, which would be for helping students at different levels or with different abilities, the assessment resources that were there for the teachers, and then the digital platform, both its format and its organization. And you can see in most of the categories, it was very close. For example, in content, you can see Discovery and Savvas both had 26% that were in the highest category, whereas McGraw-Hill was at 27%. So the very close is a theme you'll see throughout as we look at the data. And when we go to the next slide, and the final one they checked was their overall recommendation. And you can see the Savvas scored a little bit higher than the others here. And then on the next slide, we have the summary of the rubric, which is where they put all the scores together. And you can see that we had 23% in the highest category for Savvas, 17.5 and 17 for the other two, although they were higher in the second category down. So again, very close. So on our next slide, when we look at the rubrics, that just gives us one picture of the data. That's as they go through it. But then each committee at the end looked at what the teachers recommended. And as a school, they ranked what they thought was their first choice, their second choice, and their third choice. And so that's what we're seeing here. And as you can see, McGraw-Hill and Savvas both got 5 first place votes. Discovery got 4. And then for second place, Discovery and McGraw got 5, Savvas got 4, and so on for third, with the 4 going to McGraw-Hill. So again, it was very close, which I think speaks to the quality of the resources that we had to look at, that they were all very good resources. So that's the data. And so on our next slide here, and you go ahead and go on to the next one. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through school by school, and I would ask you to just very briefly state what your school's choice was and why your school chose that one. It could be why you didn't choose another, whatever you see fit. So I'll just kind of go one by one. So if we can start with our Freedom Crossing rep to please unmute and give us your input.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Beverly Slopey from FCA. It was very close between first and second, but our first choice was Savvas. We have decided that, the content was pretty much aligned to all of our standards. We really enjoyed the fact that it was broken up into the engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And all of the material needed for each of the 5 E's was in the textbook in sequential order. So everything was right there for us. The teacher support was streamlined. It gave prerequisite background knowledge needed. It also gave misconceptions to look for. We love the fact that it has remediation as well, although the remediation is online for the students. But it also did have the access points and advanced standard correlations included as well. A lot of differentiated instructions, notes are provided for the differentiated instructions to help teachers as well. It had a variety of assessments, anywhere from diagnostic to performance-based STEM projects, summative, and different types of formatives as well. As far as the digital platform, we found it very easy to navigate. We love that it had a range of reading levels for the text online for the students. It had over 100 different languages that the text can be translated to, and quite a few that can also be read in those languages, although not all of the languages. It is editable text bank, so we can kind of look at how we can test our students with that being editable, which is nice. And we like that you can create groups and assign assignments to the specific small groups as well. You can do, adjust the font in the background. You can do annotations to the text for those students that need that as well. So it was, like I said, really close, but we really enjoyed how everything was put together, the content and the teacher support given in the teacher's editions and the platform being able to navigate easily.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Slopey. Next, let's go ahead and go over to Fruit Cove Middle School, please.
Hi, This is Fair Cove Middle School. It was very close. We felt there were pros and cons to all three options, but as a whole, as a consensus, all three of our grade levels chose the same, which was discovery. We felt that it was user-friendly. The layout of the content was friendly from both a teacher's perspective as well as a student perspective. And we also felt like the online content was well put together and well organized for student and for teachers.
Very good. Thank you. Let's next go to Gamble Rogers Middle School.
Hello, this is Gamble Rogers. During our review, we also saw a lot of pros and cons for both of them, or for all three textbooks. We ended up landing on Savas, mostly because we were looking at it from a perspective of a new teacher and what would aid most in terms of still providing that engaging lesson plan. So that's why we really loved the 5 E's and allowing that planning process for a new teacher to follow. And then also all of the other resources that an experienced teacher can kind of pull and choose as needed. So we thought it really helped with everything on that point. The one counter to it is that it wasn't as much as a resource, more of like something like an extra resource to use with a glossary and those kinds of other things that we're used to seeing in textbooks. But we thought that all of the pros outweighed that, some of the things that were already listed. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Landrum Middle School.
Our conversations were similar to, I'm sure, everyone's between McGraw-Hill and Savas. Those were the two we thought we liked the best. We leaned towards McGraw-Hill, that there just seemed to be more content in the traditional textbook compared to the others, where some of the teachers felt that they didn't need as much was in there. Then we discussed that it'd be better to have, have and not need all of it than to need more. So the same as everyone else is saying, there's pros and cons. But our overall choice ended up being McGraw-Hill.
Great. Thank you. Liberty Pines.
Hi, this is Courtney Cassidy, Liberty Pines. We chose McGraw-Hill as our number one, and mainly because we thought the other two just were lacking some content in the books. And the other two also had a higher online component. And with us not being a one-to-one school, sometimes it's hard to get that online piece that would be great for the students to have, but unfortunately we just don't have that accessibility for them. As far as with the digital platform itself, we thought that the McGraw-Hill was a little bit more friendly in terms of the other two. And so, yeah, for LPA was McGraw-Hill.
Great, thank you. Mill Creek.
Hi, this is Cheryl Furlow from Mill Creek. We were along the same lines with the pros and cons. It was pretty difficult. It was very close, but we at Mill Creek also felt that McGraw-Hill was the best text for alignment with standards, and the content was richer for student learning. We also felt it would be more to engaging for students both in the classroom, and if there was assignments at home, easier to navigate through.
Great, thank you. Murray Middle School.
Good afternoon, this is Angela Hunter, assistant principal at Murray Middle School. So just like everybody else, it was a pretty close connection between the three as far as scoring went. The top two that actually from our school ended up with the exact same score when we totaled it all up were Savas and McGraw-Hill. But just like everybody else said, there were pieces we would have liked to have taken from this book and pieces we would have liked to take from that book and pieces from the other book. One of the things I think to take into consideration is, like one of the other schools mentioned, the number of veteran teachers versus new teachers. So majority of the staff here are newer teachers, and they tend to lean more towards McGraw-Hill and Savas. But then also, what is the setting? Because that conversation came up as far as digital platforms and what kids have access to home and what they have access to school. And then for the ESOL component, as we've seen an influx in those students, what are the options available for that? And then modifying assessments for something that we really looked at as well. So we kind of tied between McGraw-Hill and South.
Awesome. Thank you. Pacetti Bay.
Hi, Nancy Hicks, Pacetti Bay. Our school kind of echoes everybody else's. Our top choice was actually Discovery for the reasons that have been stated, as well as Savas. Those were our top two that we chose for the reasons that basically already been kind of discussed.
All right. Thank you. Pine Island.
Hi, this is Kim Lippo. I'm at Pine Island. Again, kind of repeating what Angela said from Murray, you know, it would be nice to be able to take a little bit from each one. But ultimately our top two were Discovery and Savas, and our team ultimately chose Savas. They thought Discovery was great. The pictures, like it was a great resource, but they were worried about the number of books that the students would have. And it's hard enough to get them to bring one book, but having to alternate between the books, we felt that would be really difficult for them. So we went with Savas as our number one choice. Again, the pacing and alignment, a lot of what FCA was sharing with us. But we felt a lot of the same things.
Great. Thank you. Patriot Oaks.
Hi, this is Kim, Patriot Oaks. I'm hearing a theme here. Our top two choices were McGraw-Hill and Savas by very few points. The number one being McGraw-Hill. Again, some of the things that were liked a little more better with McGraw-Hill were the digital platform that was discussed before and the ease of use of that, the variety of the formative and summative assessments, and the diagnostic options for those formative and summative assessments being at the point of instruction where they thought that it was needed, the images in the graphs, the textbook, including the vocabulary. Those were some of the things that scored a little bit higher than Savas. But again, that was just by a couple of points.
Great. Thank you. Palm Valley.
Hey there, it's Amy Miller, ILC at PVA. Our teachers, we really loved DE, Discovery Ed. There were a lot of workbooks, but I think the teachers really liked what they saw in them. There was rigorous materials. There was a lot of good options for teachers and for students. They really enjoyed the assessment part of it. And again, going back to that rigor, I think they're just looking for something. They're already kind of creating things that they don't need to or want to be creating. So I think that it was aligned with the level of rigor that they're kind of used to.
Great. Thank you. Sebastian Middle School.
Hello, Christina Harvey. So we, same thing. I'm not gonna repeat everything else. Our top two were DE and, were McGraw-Hill and Savas. And everyone has said all the positive things, but I was curious if anybody noticed like Savas and DE were missing out on like a section of nature of science. Not that we teach from the book, but that we are missing that. And then with Savas, there was no index or glossary, and I'm not sure if that's because it was just like a, hey, we're handing this to you to just check out, and there may be something more to it later on. But, and then as you're using, if you're using the textbook, there really isn't like a defined separation between each unit or chapter. But those were some things that kind of we all noticed. All the positives, everything that everyone has said, all those positives were there, but those were just some of the things that kind of made us vote for McGraw-Hill over Savas and DE. just some of those things. And then McGraw Hill has the 5 E's. I just kind of interpreted earlier. I was like, but they do have the 5 E's. That's our vote, McGraw Hill.
Great, thank you. Swiss Point.
Hi, Sydney Etheridge. So we're actually opposite of Sebastian. We did not like McGraw Hill at all. And we loved Savas. We did recognize how they didn't have the index and things like that, but we actually thought the McGraw Hill, yes, it had good information. We thought it had way too much information and unnecessary information that would have been even more confusing to kids if we were using the books. We also liked that Savas was a thin book. These kids already carry turtle shells on their back and complain about having back issues and stuff, and the McGraw Hill book is very chunky. And it makes us not want to use a book where they're going to have to carry it around or even just have to worry about keeping it in a locker and dealing with all of that when they could carry a thinner book. All of the pros and everything that everybody else said, our second option was Discovery Ed. We did like that it was chunked into different sections. We were like, we could either keep the books in our class and just use the one book that we need for that, first few units and move on, or have them keep it at home and just say, all right, we're going to bring this other book in, so keep the other one at home kind of thing, so they didn't have to carry all of them. There were different ways that we could go about that. But I'm not going to repeat all the pros that everybody has already said about them. That's pretty much about it. But those were our cons. And we ultimately chose Savas. We figured an index and glossary aren't really a big deal. We could always tab the books ourselves and be like, hey, turn to this page like we did back in the day. They can read the numbers on the bottom of the page and we could figure it out.
Awesome, thank you. And finally, Valley Ridge Academy.
Hi, Blake Sotelo here, Valley Ridge. We actually chose Discovery Ed as our first choice and Savas as our second choice. Piggybacking what everybody is saying for the two, with the Discovery Ed, we really liked how the nature of science was actually included in each section. We liked the videos, how it really matched the content, the virtual field trips you could take on it, the ELL support that was there. And we also liked how we felt like the book was a little easier to follow with the lessons, the labs, and the formative assessments of what did you figure out at the end of each section. We thought was very supportive. We also, in the teacher edition, liked the graphic organizers that were there. Our second choice, Savas, again, that's what everybody was saying, the negatives, that there's no glossary. It is much easier to understand. We felt that it was way more digital than the other two programs, which could be a disadvantage to some of our students who don't have the technology at home. We felt like a lot more was online than it was in hand. So Discovery Ed and Savas were our top two.
Great, thank you. Dr. Lawson, if we just jump to the next slide, please. So it looks like we have, and I apologize if I get your last name incorrect, Miss Villadeniga. I'm assuming you're a community member that's here, and we would love to hear any input you would have.
It's Villadoniga, but that's very good.
I'm sorry.
Very close, very close. I agree with just about everything I heard. I was a teacher. I'm a retired teacher from St. Johns County. I didn't teach science. I taught foreign language, but looking at it from a teacher's viewpoint, my first choice was Savas, and mostly because of everything, all the pros that everybody said. Actually, McGraw Hill was my last choice. So
Great,
that's
thank you.
about all I can say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And we also have Ms. Gerald from the District ESE. Even though she's not a voting member, we would love to hear any input you would have.
Thank you so much. So our team took a look at the resources and chose Discovery Education as our first choice and McGraw Hill as second choice. Reason being is that a lot of our students with IEPs benefit from assistive technology. So we sort of looked at the resources through those lenses, through that lens, and how well our students could access the materials through their AT devices. And Discovery Ed and McGraw Hill had the best user friendliness and availability to our students. So those were our top two choices.
Great. Thank you so much. So I gotta say, I'm very impressed and very grateful for all the thoughtful input that everyone has given. At this point, we're gonna go ahead, if we can go to the next slide, Dr. Lawson, please. So now's the point where we get to vote for your top choice. And we're gonna do that with a poll. And I know we went over how to do that, but I want you to keep in mind that what we're doing is we're just trying to come to a consensus of the top two choices. So whichever publisher gets the top choice would be our number one. Whichever gets the second most will be our second choice. And those are the ones that we will recommend on to the superintendent and the school board, who have the final say in which ones we adopt. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lawson to run our poll.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kirsch, we are going to launch the poll. By my numbers, we have 15 voting members in this session. So once I have 15 responses, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. If you will please, after you make your choice, raise your hand. That will help me to know that everyone who is a voting member has voted. I'm going to launch the poll right now. If you can't see the poll on your screen, please unmute and let me know so that I can make sure looks like everybody's getting the vote in. All right, I have 15 responses on my poll, but I only show 13 hands raised. If I see 14. Just want to make sure everyone who needed to vote was able to. Okay, looks like I've got everyone. So I'm going to end the poll and lower hands. And then I'm going to share the results with you. Again, you as a participant of this meeting will be able to see the results on your screen. However, it does not show the results on the live stream of YouTube. So I will read out the results. So we had 15 votes. We have 4 out of 15 votes going to Discovery Education, which is 27%. We have 5 out of 15 votes going to Savas, which is 33%. And we have 6 out of 15 votes going to McGraw-Hill, which is 40%. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Kirsch.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Lawson. So it looks like going with the votes, our recommendations, the first choice would be McGraw-Hill, and the second choice would be Savas. The main reason that we're giving 2 choices is we do not yet know which ones will be approved by the state. We hope to hear about that soon. And in the event that we couldn't do the one that we wanted wasn't approved, we need to have the second one there. So I'd like to just wrap up by saying another thank you to everybody. I know how much time and effort you put into this, as well as all of the teachers, community members, parents that took part. And we really appreciate that. We want to make sure we have the best possible resources for our students and our teachers. And your work goes a long way to us being able to do that. So I don't know if Ms. Dixon, if you have anything you'd like to say.
No, I just want to thank everybody for their participation and for your leadership. Mr. Hirsch, you guys have done an amazing job. We want to thank our community members and parents for their participation, whether during the initial or the focused review. We are so grateful for your input on this process. Parental involvement is really important to us. And so we thank you very, very much. Thanks for doing an excellent job. And until next year, back to you, Mr. Hirsch.
All right. Well, I again, just thank you so much.